Hi, like my dad said, I am Matt Pfenninger, and I'm a cancer survivor, and I'm here to share my story with you today. But first, I'd like to thank you all for being out here and supporting cancer services because they do a great job. They support the community so well with the taking people to their appointments and giving them meals and training them to be caregivers and wigs and all that amazing stuff. And I'm glad you're out here to support them. And I would especially like to thank Julie Nana and my mom for getting me out here. Frankly, I'm very surprised because the last time I appeared at this fashion show, I was a model. And at dress rehearsal, I kind of did a little of this thing. And they said, don't you dare do that at the show. What did I do? I did it at the show. And so I thought I would have been blacklisted and never invited back, but I'm very honored to be here, and I thank you that I'm here. So like my dad said, I was born in 1977, and it was a great year because I was born and Star Wars: A New Hope came out. And I grew up here in Midland with my dad and my mom and my two sisters, and they instilled in us a very strong faith and a very strong work ethic, which I'm paying for today. Currently, I live in Cincinnati, where I'm a principal engineer at GE Aerospace, and I help design the software that controls the jet engines that you're all flying around with when you take plane trips. Cancer came to me at the end of 1993, beginning in 1994, and I first noticed it as some double vision. I was out at the relatively new Midland Mall at the time, buying CDs with some Christmas money, and I started seeing two of the labels of the CDs. Thought it was kind of funny, so I told my dad, which eventually led to seeing my eye doctor, Dr. Buckingham, and then another eye doctor, Dr. Jackson, and then to an MRI. So I don't know if you guys have ever had an MRI of your brain. Not really that bad. They lay you down and kind of slide you into a tube about the size of a large garbage can while loud buzzing noises go on around you. It takes about an hour, and I think I actually fell asleep for that first one. It wasn't bad at all. But the next day, when I was in my algebra trig class, I got a note from the office saying my mom will be here to pick me up at your locker. So I immediately started panicking, freaking out, and one of my friends in the class, Honoree Ghosh, said, you can't worry about it, you can't freak out about it, there's nothing you can do about it right now. I knew it was great advice, but I couldn't take it. I was scared. So I went out to the hall and met my mom at my locker, and as soon as we saw each other, we started crying and hugging. I knew something was wrong. It took me over to get some more MRIs, which ended up revealing something the size of a bouncy ball was growing right at the center of my brain in my pineal gland. Very rare spot to get cancer, and only 3 doctors in the country at the time took the tumors out. So I had 3 choices. I could just let it go and die. I could have it biopsied, which would probably reveal that it would have to come out, or I could just have it take it out. So we found out that one out of the 3 doctors trained the other 2 doctors. So we went to him, and my journey took me across the galaxy to Columbia Presbyterian University in New York City. The surgery itself lasted about 9 hours. It took place on February 24th, 1994. I woke up, and even though they told me I wasn't going to be in any pain, I was in the most pain I'd ever been in my life. People couldn't even touch my bed without it hurting. I returned home after recovering from there and started a regimen of radiation therapy with Dr. Mehta here at Midland Hospital. And after 28 or when you start radiation of your brain, they need something to stabilize your head. So what they do is they take a plastic mesh and form a mask around your face. Kind of reminded me a little bit of Darth Vader. So I had my 28 days of radiation, and was better for a while. And then around Thanksgiving of that next year, or of that year, it came back. This time, it wasn't a bouncing ball sized tumor. It was three golf ball sized tumors at the base of my skull. You wouldn't think that would fit back there, but it did. And I had one pea-sized one at the base of my spine. So my dad and Dr. Valcoop, my oncologist, coordinated with Sloan Kettering to design what I would be getting for chemotherapy. Turned out to be the highest doses of chemotherapy that Midland Hospital had given at the time. But hell, I was young, I could take it. It was rough. The first 2 rounds I went through and got really, really sick. I was throwing up, very weak, couldn't eat. All the things that chemotherapy does to you are nasty. And Dr. Velkoop told my dad that it really didn't look like things were doing very much. So he got desperate. He wrote a letter to all the doctors in Midland and said, I know you guys have a power to heal, so please come to a healing service to heal my son. So on the night of the service, a ton of doctors and nurses were there, all races, all religions, all nationalities, you name it, they were there. And my family was there, and my family laid their hands on me, and we prayed. The pastor of our church, Father Jack Johnson, came and said a prayer service. I went straight from there to my 3rd round of chemotherapy and got sick again. And 10 days later, I had a checkup MRI, and the cancer had totally disappeared. Yeah, for sure. The radiologist couldn't explain it, but we could. It was a little chemotherapy and a lot of God. Unfortunately, the Empire Strikes Back. A little while, later that year, I went to homecoming with a friend, and I did a little bit of headbanging. Probably not too smart because I've got a plastic tube embedded in my brain, and things started feeling a little funny, so we had some MRIs done, and something was going on. We watched it for a couple months, and it was getting worse. So there really wasn't a whole lot we could do. So my dad contacted people again. He's good at doing that. When he wants something done, he gets things done. He contacted a doctor at Duke University Medical Center who had cured somebody else of a rare cancer. And that doctor said, yes, I can cure the cancer, but I'm going to kill your son. You're going to have to talk to my wife, who's the head of the pediatric bone marrow transplant, and she'll fix him. So that's what I did. My journey took me again across the galaxy to Durham, North Carolina, and my 2 wing women, my mom and my grandma, came with me to stay with me the whole time. Before I left, David Angela Pasek and Tim and Catherine Richard, who are over here visiting us today and supporting us today, got a youth group together. I was in a youth group at the time, and they got the youth group together. And I don't know, you guys probably can't imagine it, but you know how strange and how humbling and how cool it is to have seniors in high school crying for you and praying over you and giving you words of encouragement. It taught me a lot about people and a lot about people that I didn't expect. So when I left, I went to North Carolina, and it was a really fairly easy bone marrow transplant. They gave me a really super high doses of chemotherapy, and then dripped my bone marrow back into me. It was, I think I got out of the hospital in record time with very little side effects. I was lucky because I was able to donate my own bone marrow, which would reduce the chance of getting graft versus host disease or host versus graft disease and all that kind of stuff. But I was out in relative record time, like I said, but had to stay around in the area for about 3 months. And just before I started coming home, I started getting a sore throat. The doctor said it was nothing, it'll go away. So I came back home and got reintegrated here and was going to go on a mission trip with the Blessed Sacrament Youth. But a week beforehand, Dr. Roden, my ENT doctor, found something in my nose. It was a pseudo-cancerous tumor, not quite cancer, not quite not cancer. My immune system hadn't come back quite right, and the virus that normally gives people mono was causing crazy things to happen for me. So I opted not to go on that mission trip and stay home and rest because college was coming up and I had gotten into the University of Michigan. It was my dream since 6 years old. I had bled blue. My mom and dad both went there. My grandpa went there. My sister would go there. So I started off there at the beginning of that year and was there for about 2 weeks. I was feeling pretty crappy and ended up finding a spot of the same pseudocancerous stuff in my right lung. So I came home thinking I'd be back to school in a couple weeks, and came home and had Dr. Rob Jones, a very distinguished thoracic surgeon, take out that spot in my right lung. And when he did a checkup to see how it went, he found an AV malformation in that same right lung, which was blowing up like a balloon in my lung, and if it burst, it would have killed me. So I had an emergency rush over to St. Mary's Hospital and eventually had a third of my right lung taken out. At that point, I was feeling pretty crappy. The tumors in my nose and throat had grown bigger and bigger, and I couldn't really eat or swallow. I didn't feel like eating or swallowing. So the doctors put me on steroids. It was going to help reduce the tumor sizes and help give me an appetite. So when my dad called from work on his way home and said, "What can I bring you to eat?" I said, "Give me some tacos from Taco Bell." Yeah, I still like Taco Bell, but that was a weird request. So I sat down in our living room to start eating them, and I took a bite and felt something strange in my throat, and immediately spat out bright red blood on our carpet and then into our white sink and just kept bleeding. My dad came in and said, "I'm getting you to the hospital. We don't have time for the ambulance to get here." So we got a big bowl, which I continued to bleed in as we were driving to the hospital. When we got there, I passed out. I think I bled about 2 liters of blood that day. And when I woke up, the bleeding had stopped, but nobody really found what it was. So my life was getting pretty bad at that point. The dark side felt like it was closing in, and the only real choice that I had was to go back down to Duke University to have some experimental medical treatment. So that's where I went, and my 2 wingwomen came with me yet again and gave up a ton of their lives to be with me. And as I got there, we checked in, and the bleeding happened again. And this time, the tumors in my nose and throat were so constricted, the clots of blood that were forming were choking me, and I couldn't breathe. So when the nurse said, "Do you want us to put in a trach tube?" I said, "Yes," and passed out, and I woke up. I woke up to I had a trach tube and a ventilator was breathing for me, but it sounded like Darth Vader. I was at Duke for a long time after that. I think it was 7 or 8 months 5 out of those months, I was getting platelets, which help you stop bleeding, and red blood cells, which carry the oxygen every day or every other day. I almost died several times. I had tubes everywhere, in my throat, in my stomach to eat, IVs, all that kind of crap. I've got pictures to prove it. Dad's shown them at many of his conferences. The doctors called my dad a couple times saying that I wasn't going to make it and he should get down there if he wanted to see me alive. Eventually, as a last-ditch effort, they decided to drip the bone marrow back into my body. They had some spare bone marrow for me. They dripped that back into my body. And a couple months later, when I was getting a checkup MRI that was expected to be worse or maybe stable, it turned out to show things were getting better. I started recovering, and after a couple months there, I ended up recovering quite nicely, and I returned home. And when I landed, there was a party at the airport for me. Family and friends and everybody I loved was there. My dad had hired somebody to fly a plane with a banner behind it that said, "Welcome home, Matt." It was a pretty amazing thing. I could not have lived through it without the people there to support me. They were my advocates. They were my hope. They were what I decided to live for. So you and Cancer Services are the force for somebody. No matter how capable or people are when they're healthy, when they're sick, they need help. When they're sick, they may not want to ask for help, but they need it. Cancer Services provides that help for people. They, like I said earlier, they give people rides to their appointments. They help coordinate appointments. They teach the caregivers how to care for the people that are sick. They make the wigs, or they help fit people for the wigs and other things. They do just an amazing thing. They know what to think about when you don't know what to think about. And I thank you guys for supporting them once again. And I'd ask you to be on the lookout where you could be an unofficial member of Cancer Services, where you can find a cancer patient and deliver somebody a meal, or give them a ride, or just give them somebody to talk to. It's not hard to do. You guys can be Jedi, and you can change the world. Thank you.